Number 10. Performing surgery. Back in 2021, a plastic surgeon from Sacramento, California tried to join a virtual court hearing while he was still inside the operating room and working on a patient. The surgeon's name is Scott Green, and he was highly criticized for this bad decision during the video meeting in March. He claims everything was blown way out of proportion, and he emphasized that his patient was never in real danger. But he was clearly in the middle of an operating room and still fully dressed in his surgical clothing when the court hearing began. Green tried to defend himself by stating he was with another licensed doctor who had already completed his plastic surgery residency. When the meeting began, his colleague was the only one operating on the patient, and Green was just observing the closing of the facelift procedure. Gary Lank, the Sacramento Superior Court Commissioner in charge of the hearing, was still very uncomfortable continuing when he felt like the welfare of a patient was at risk. In hindsight, Green should have just stepped out of the room to take the call, but his mistake led to some going as far as accusing him of malpractice. The surgeon blamed his unfamiliarity with technology as one of the main reasons for his temporary lapse in judgment. Number 9. Murder while on Zoom. In March 2021, a man from Altadena, California was charged with murdering his uncle and mother while she was on a Zoom call. 32-year-old Robert Anderson Cotton lived with his 67-year-old mother, Carol Brown, and his 69-year-old uncle, Kenneth Preston. At the time of the incident, Carol was in the middle of a Zoom meeting with one of her colleagues. Robert first went after Uncle Kenneth and dragged him out of the house, and then the killer came back to turn his sights on his own mother. When Carol was attacked, her colleague witnessed the entire event over Zoom and immediately reported what she saw to the police. When officers arrived, Robert was nowhere to be seen, but they noticed there was a car missing. Kenneth's body was found in the home's driveway, and Carol was found dead inside. After a short while, Robert returned to the scene of the crime where police were still waiting for him. He was then taken into custody and charged for the senseless double homicide. Authorities did not release the murder motive to the public, and it's still unclear what led to these gruesome attacks. Whatever the case may be, Carol's colleague was more than likely completely traumatized by the whole event after witnessing everything with her own eyes. Number 8. You're a potato. A Microsoft Teams meeting went wrong when their boss unknowingly turned on a filter that made her into a potato and a laughingstock. Lizette Ocampo is the National Political Director for People for the American Way, a progressive advocacy group. She was hosting a weekly check-in that usually happens every Monday with her colleagues when something unexpected happened. After she started speaking, her face transformed into a spud, and only her eyes and mouth were left visible. The filter was applied right at the beginning of the meeting, and it stayed on throughout the entire call. She claimed she had downloaded a few Snapchat filters so she could use them in future Zoom meetings in order to lift people's spirits, but she didn't know the filters could be used with Microsoft Office. Rochelle Clegg, a member of Ocampo's team, said everyone burst into laughter when they noticed their boss was a talking potato. The meeting only lasted about a half an hour, but Clegg said they spent about 10 minutes laughing over the hilarious mistake. Ocampo tried for a while to switch the camera back to normal, but after many failed attempts, she just decided to embrace her new potato identity. Number 7. Accidental shooting. 21-year-old Shamaya Lynn was at her apartment in Altamont Springs in Central Florida doing some work. While she was in a meeting on a Zoom call with her colleagues, one of her 2 toddlers had somehow managed to pick up a loaded gun that was left within their reach. Not knowing the severity of the situation, the child then shot Shamaya in the head multiple times while her co-workers watched in horror. A 911 call was placed by a woman in the meeting who frantically explained that she heard a loud noise go off and then saw Shamaya falling backwards off her chair. She also saw a lot of blood but wasn't exactly sure what had happened to her. She also told the dispatcher that she could hear a baby crying in the background but couldn't see anything else. When Shamaya's boyfriend came home, he also called 911 after finding her unconscious in a pool of blood. The man claimed to be the father of the 2 young children and was put into handcuffs once authorities arrived at the scene. Unfortunately, the mother of 2 died thanks to her injuries after failed attempts to save her life by paramedics. The father was questioned but not arrested since nobody could have ever guessed something so tragic could happen. Number 6. BBC Dad. Now that we have more horrifying cases out of the way, let's get into some funny stories that have happened over Zoom calls. In March 2017, Professor Robert Kelly became famously known to the world as BBC Dad after he was hilariously interrupted by his children while doing a live video interview for a news channel speaking on the impeachment of South Korean President Park Geun-hye. Soon after, Kelly started sharing his opinions on the matter. His daughter barged into the room full force, swinging the office door wide open and announcing her presence to everyone watching the news at home. She danced adorably behind him for a moment before standing right next to him in the clip. He then lightly pushed her away from the camera, but not even a few minutes later, his toddler, who was still in his mobile high chair, also stormed into the office with his wife chasing right behind him to try and stop him. Kelly's wife then wrangles the kids up and tries to sneak them quietly out of the room. Visibly embarrassed, he then apologizes for the brief interruption and tries to continue on with the interview as professionally as he can, even though you can still hear his children crying and screaming in the background of the video. Thankfully, most of us thought this disturbance was widely adorable. Number 5. Danny DeVito. A man quit his job during the pandemic after his boss didn't appreciate his decorations in the background of their employee Zoom meetings. The man's name is not listed, but like many during the COVID-19 outbreak, he began working remotely in order to keep himself safe from harm and still earn a living. Like many of us, he decorated his home with things that made him happy, and one of those decorations just so happened to be a life-size cardboard cutout of the one and only Danny DeVito. When he was in one Zoom meeting with his boss, the cutout did not go over well, and he was asked to remove it for the remainder of the call. The man agreed and moved it out of the way, not to antagonize his supervisor. After the meeting had ended, though, he of course put Danny back into his place. A week later, he was in another Zoom call and had forgotten to move the cutout out of the background. Instead of asking him to remove it again nicely, his boss waited until the call was finished and proceeded to blow up on the poor guy, which forced the employee to hold his ground. He wasn't fired for the incident, but he decided to take his talents elsewhere and quit his job just a short time later, possibly somewhere that appreciates Danny DeVito just as much as he and everyone else does. Have you ever stood up to a boss for something you really believed in? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, hit that subscribe button. Number 4. Rant Gone Wrong. A girl known on TikTok by the username It's Jordan shared a devastatingly embarrassing clip to the social media platform of her ranting about a teacher during a Zoom class in August 2020. The young woman, who we'll call Jordan, was recording herself while waiting for the class to begin, not thinking anybody could hear her in the Zoom call yet. She was going off on a rant about her teacher because he had apparently said the students could not be in their bed, bathroom, or kitchen during the class calls. Jordan started off by saying that she didn't have anywhere else to do the call from and that she didn't own an 18-bedroom house. She was visibly annoyed and irritated in the video ran and might have been taking things a little too far. Then, out of nowhere, she was cut off by her teacher responding to the comments she made. Apparently, he had been able to hear her the entire time, and her teacher said he had only stated that the students just needed to be in an appropriate place for the class and not to be under the covers in bed or on the toilet in the bathroom during lessons. Jordan's face completely changed after hearing this, and the look of shock washed over her as her mouth was left wide open. She says, "Oh God," over and over, and you can almost feel her embarrassment through the screen. The video received over 4 million likes on the platform and continues to be an example for online students to remember to keep their mics muted. Number 3. You Can't See Me. A man who was tired of getting caught in the background of his fiance's Zoom calls came up with an ingenious way to disguise himself. Since the start of the pandemic, an insane amount of people have been caught in an embarrassing situation on Zoom, like children interrupting important meetings or a naked spouse suddenly making a surprise appearance. The man, only known by his TikTok handle Tailored Bits, once posted on the platform to show off his idea to use a green morph suit to not get caught on video during his fiance's Zoom calls. He thought that wearing the suit would make him disappear entirely out of view and out of ridicule, like when people use green screens and vanish while wearing the same color. That's how he thought it would happen, at least, but it didn't go exactly according to plan. In the video he posted for his followers, you can see his fiancée on a work call and then him appearing still in plain view in the background. His face was not covered by the suit, and he was holding a coffee cup in one hand, which made it even more obvious that he was there. And that's without mentioning the glitching graphics as his green screen suit moved. Even though his plan didn't work out, it didn't look like the fiancée cared too much. She probably was used to his silly antics and just continued on with what she was doing. Number 2. Driving on Zoom. The Ohio State Senator Andrew Brenner claims he was not distracted during a government Zoom meeting, but he seemed to be driving on the road during one Zoom call. In May 2021, the state's control board got together to discuss some important financial matters, and Senator Brenner did not seem to be taking things that seriously. The entire call was live streamed to the public, and during the beginning of the video, he can be seen just sitting in the driver's seat of his car. Brenner then leans forward and turns off his camera and returns a moment later with a new background that makes it seem like he's in his office. The senator then continues to drive throughout the rest of the meeting, seemingly believing that he's fooling everyone with his wonky background. Every few minutes, Brenner turns his head, revealing his driver's side window in the video, completely giving away his disguise. As disrespectful as it seemed, Brenner said he wasn't distracted and even explained that he's done this on a few calls in the past. Although he said he didn't do anything wrong, the state's House of Representatives was actually considering a bill that would penalize phone use while driving around the time this incident occurred, making the senator look even worse. Number 1. Singing in the shower. Dads love embarrassing their family with silly jokes and phrases, but the dad from this story makes a very bad judgment call and completely ruins his wife's important Zoom meeting. Greg Hughes, father to 2 girls, jumps at any opportunity to act like a total dork to get a few laughs. One day his wife told the entire family she had an important work meeting and was not to be interrupted under any circumstances. Being the good husband that he is, Greg took control of the situation and gathered up the kids to watch them while his wife got some peace and quiet. Greg laid out his 9-year-old's clothes for the day and gave her a book to read until they needed to leave. He set the 5-year-old up with an iPad to distract her while he took a quick shower. While in the bathroom, he heard his daughter calling out that she was hungry, and in order to keep them away from his wife's meeting, he had to think on his toes. So he started to loudly sing a comical song about washing your butt in an attempt to entertain the child. Unfortunately, he didn't take into consideration the proximity of the bathroom and his wife's office, and a few moments after he started his song, she quietly walked into the bathroom and in the softest but sternest voice she could muster said, "What the F are you doing? Everyone can hear you." His wife then left to continue her meeting, and that's how Greg Hughes ruined her Zoom call while singing a song about butts. Thanks so much for watching. Do you have any embarrassing Zoom stories of your own? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next time on The Bad Badger.